You didn't fix them. You didn't rescue them. You didn't magically heal their entire life with your love. What you did was quieter, rarer, and honestly more powerful than fixing. You gave them emotional safety they had never consistently felt before. And for an avoidant nervous system, that kind of safety doesn't just feel nice, it feels unfamiliar. It feels almost unreal. Like stepping into warmth after living your whole life in cold weather and pretending you didn't mind. An avoidant learns early that closeness comes with a cost. That needing people leads to disappointment. That opening up becomes a weakness someone will use. So they train themselves to survive by staying controlled. They stay composed. They stay fine. They stay independent. They keep people at a distance where nobody can truly touch the soft parts. And they call that peace. But it isn't peace. It's protection. Then you came along, and you didn't demand they bleed their entire soul on day one. You didn't punish them for being slow. You didn't mock their walls. You didn't chase them like a desperate person trying to prove your worth. You showed something they weren't prepared for: calm consistency. A presence that didn't spike. A love that didn't come with a hook. A care that didn't need drama to be real. That's emotional safety. Emotional safety is when someone can be imperfect and not be humiliated. It's when someone can be quiet and not be punished. It's when someone can have a bad day and not be abandoned. It's when someone can say, "I don't know how to talk about this," and still be met with patience instead of pressure. It's when your nervous system starts to relax because it senses, "I'm not in danger here." And here's what happens when an avoidant finally experiences that their system starts to regulate around you. They may not say it out loud. They may even act like it's nothing. But their body knows. Their body knows your energy is different. Your steadiness becomes a kind of medicine, not because you're a healer, but because you're safe. You weren't too much, the way they expected. You weren't chaotic. You weren't unpredictable. You weren't the type of love that yells and breaks and begs and blames. You were the type of love that holds. The type of love that stays grounded. And for someone who built their entire identity around not needing anyone, that can be terrifying and addictive at the same time. Terrifying because safety invites surrender. Safety tempts them to drop the armor. Safety makes them feel things they've avoided for years. Safety asks the one question their whole nervous system hates. What if you let this in? Because the moment they let it in, they risk losing it. And losing something safe hurts more than losing something chaotic. Losing something safe forces them to face themselves. Addictive because your safety feels like relief. It's like a deep exhale they didn't know they were holding. They feel calmer around you. More human. More understood. They start sharing little things without realizing it. They start showing softness in small moments. They start reaching for you in ways they can't explain. They may even become more affectionate than they expected, because their system is tasting comfort, and it wants more. But avoidants don't know how to hold comfort without fear. The moment comfort becomes real, their mind starts scanning for threats. What if they expect more? What if I disappoint them? What if I lose my freedom? What if I can't keep this up? What if they see the parts of me I hide? Safety becomes a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous to people who survived by hiding. So sometimes they pull back. Not because you did something wrong, but because closeness activates old alarms. They retreat to regain control. They tell themselves they need space. They try to return to the old identity, independent, detached, untouched. But here's the problem for them now: they have felt you. They have felt what safety feels like. And once you feel that, it's hard to go back to numb. That's why they can't get over you. Not because you were perfect. Not because you were the only person on earth. But because you gave them an experience their nervous system will remember. You became a reference point. A before and after. You showed them a kind of love that didn't require them to perform, but also didn't allow them to hide forever. Your presence quietly exposed the truth. They weren't cold-hearted. They were scared. They weren't incapable of love, they were untrained in safety. And when you leave, the absence isn't just emotional. It's biological. It's the loss of regulation. It's the loss of calm. It's the loss of that steady energy that made them feel less alone inside themselves. They might distract. They might date. They might act unbothered. But in quiet moments, the nervous system whispers the truth. That person made you feel safe, and you didn't know how to keep it. So no, you didn't fix them. You didn't heal their soul like magic. You gave them a safe emotional environment, and that environment revealed something to them, what love feels like when it doesn't come with chaos. And once someone tastes that kind of safety, their body doesn't forget it, especially if they lost it, because they couldn't stay present when it mattered. Your love became their nervous system's regulation. And that's why they can't get over you. Even when their pride tries to pretend they can. Because with an avoidant, what looks like indifference on the outside is often a body that has learned to survive by staying controlled. Their system is trained to shut down, to detach, to go numb the moment emotion gets intense. They call it being calm. They call it being rational. They call it being independent. But a lot of the time, it's not calm. It's a freeze response. It's self-protection. Then you came in with a different energy. Not loud. Not chaotic, not inconsistent. You were steady. You were present. You were warm without being invasive. And ladies and gentlemen, that kind of steadiness is not just romantic, it's regulating. It tells the nervous system, you can breathe here. It tells the body, you don't have to stay on guard. It tells the mind, you don't have to anticipate an emotional ambush. That's why avoidants often feel strangely peaceful around the right person, even if they can't explain why. Your presence lowers their inner noise. Your tone softens their hypervigilance. Your patience slows their urge to run. When they are with you, the part of them that is always scanning for danger can finally rest. And that rest feels like relief. Not the superficial relief of fun, but the deep relief of safety. This is what most people misunderstand. They think the avoidant didn't care because they didn't express emotion loudly. But regulation doesn't always look like romance. Regulation looks like them staying longer than they usually stay. It looks like them texting you first sometimes, then not understanding why they did it. It looks like them opening up in small fragments, then pulling back because it scares them how good it felt. It looks like them being more affectionate in private than they are in public. It looks like them feeling calm in your presence, then feeling irritated when they leave, because irritation is often just anxiety wearing a mask. When you regulate someone's nervous system, you become associated with safety in their body. And when you're gone, it doesn't just feel like missing a person. It feels like losing the one place their body could rest. That's why their missing you can show up as restlessness. They can't focus. They can't settle. Their distractions don't hit the same. Their mind keeps drifting back. Their sleep can become weird. Their appetite can change. They may feel the strange agitation that they can't label, because they were never taught how to name what their body is doing. Here's the cruel part, they may not even realize that you were regulating them until you're not there anymore. While you were present, they could still pretend they were fine. They could still claim they didn't need anyone. But your absence exposes the truth. Their nervous system is now forced to regulate itself without the support it quietly depended on. And for an avoidant, self-regulation often means detachment. But detachment only works until it doesn't. Detachment is a short-term strategy. Over time, it turns into emptiness. So they start craving you not always as romantic love at first, but as relief. Your voice, your energy, your presence. A simple message from you can drop their anxiety instantly. That's why they hover. That's why they breadcrumb. That's why they test. They're not always doing it to manipulate you. They're doing it because their body is looking for the fastest way to calm the alarm inside them. They want the soothing effect of your connection without the vulnerability of fully returning. And that's why the pattern can be so confusing for you. Because you'll notice they reach out more when they're stressed. They miss you more when life hits them. They think about you more when they feel overwhelmed. That's not random. That's their nervous system remembering. This person made me feel steady. You became the emotional home base they didn't know how to build inside themselves. But regulation creates another problem. Dependence triggers fear. Because the moment an avoidant senses they're depending on someone emotionally, their system panics. Dependence feels like a trap. It feels like weakness. It feels like the beginning of abandonment. So they do what they've always done. They pull away to regain control. They create space to prove to themselves they don't need you. They try to reset to the identity that feels safe. I'm fine alone. This is the push-pull. This is why they can be close, then cold. Warm, then distant. Loving, then unavailable. It's not because you weren't enough. It's because you were effective. You were real. You actually reached the part of them that feels. And feeling is both the thing they secretly crave and the thing they've trained themselves to fear. So when you leave, they can't replace you easily. Not because nobody is attractive, but because not everyone regulates them. Many connections are stimulating, but not soothing. Many people bring chemistry, but not safety. Many people bring excitement, but not peace. You brought peace. And peace is rare to someone who has lived in defense mode. That's why they can date someone else and still think about you. That's why they can act proud and still check your page. That's why they can say, I'm fine. But their body tells a different story. Because their nervous system remembers what it felt like to be calm around you. And now calm is missing. And the hardest truth is this: until they learn to regulate themselves, until they learn emotional tolerance, communication, repair, and presence, they will keep craving the people who made them feel safe, while simultaneously pushing them away. They don't miss you only because of what you did for them. They miss you because your presence exposed a version of life that felt softer, steadier, more human. And now their body is back in survival mode without you. You reflected back a version of them they secretly wanted to be. And that is one of the most haunting experiences an avoidant can have. Because you didn't just love them for who they performed as. You loved them in a way that reached behind the mask. You saw the softer person inside the armor. And instead of punishing that softness, you respected it. Instead of using it against them, you protected it. And for an avoidant nervous system, that is rare enough to feel dangerous, because being truly seen is the one thing they've spent their whole life avoiding. Avoidants often build identity around control. I don't need anyone. I'm strong. I'm rational. I'm independent. That identity protects them from shame and rejection. But inside, there is usually another version of them that exists in private. A version that wants closeness. A version that wants to be understood. A version that wants to be held without being judged. A version that wants to stop fighting love. They don't talk about that version, because talking about it makes it real. And real closeness triggers fear. Then you came along and, without forcing, you drew that version out. It might have happened in tiny moments. The way they softened around you when nobody was watching. The way they laughed more freely. The way their voice became warmer. The way they asked you questions they never asked anyone. The way they rested next to you and looked almost peaceful. You made them feel human in a way they weren't used to. And that wasn't because you were perfect. It was because your energy gave them permission to be imperfect without being punished. When you reflect a better version of someone back to them, you create a mirror, and mirrors are powerful. A mirror doesn't force them to change. It simply shows them what's possible. It shows them who they could be when they're not trapped inside defense. It shows them you are capable of warmth. You are capable of tenderness. You are capable of showing up. And for an avoidant, that's both comforting and terrifying, because it disrupts the story they've lived by. This is just how I am. If you showed them they can be softer, then it means they're not doomed to be cold. If you showed them they can be present, then it means their disappearances were choices, not destiny. If you showed them they can love deeply, then it means they can no longer hide behind the excuse that they're not built for relationships. Your love removes their hiding places. That's why your impact lasts. Because you didn't just give them memories. You gave them a reference point. You became the person who knows the truth about them, the truth they don't always want to face. You saw their potential. You saw their heart under the armor. And even if they ran, even if they sabotaged, even if they acted like it wasn't a big deal, they carry that mirror with them afterward. Now, here's what happens when an avoidant loses someone who mirrored their better self. They try to replace the feeling. They try to find another connection that gives them the same calm, the same softness, the same ease. But it's not easy, because the feeling wasn't only about chemistry. It was about safety and reflection. You reflected their best self, and that doesn't happen in every connection. Many connections trigger performance. Many connections trigger ego. Many connections stay on the surface. But with you, they tasted depth. They tasted a version of intimacy that didn't require them to be perfect, but did require them to be real. So after you, other connections can feel hollow. They may date. They may flirt. They may distract themselves. But deep down, they compare. Not in a shallow way, but in a nervous system way. I don't feel as calm. I don't feel as understood. I don't feel that same softness. And that comparison can create regret, because now they realize they didn't just lose a person. They lost a mirror that helped them feel more like the person they want to be. This is also why they can't get over you. Because letting you go fully would mean letting that version of themselves go too. If they accept that you're gone, they have to face the fact that they pushed away the one person who brought out their best. And that triggers shame. Because shame says, I ruined the good thing. Shame says, I don't deserve that kind of love. Shame says, I can't keep what's healthy. So instead of fully grieving, they hover. They check, they test. They keep a thread alive. Because a thread keeps the mirror alive. They might not even want you back fully yet. They just want access to the reflection. They want proof that the version of themselves you saw is still real. They want reassurance that they are not the villain. They want to soothe the ache of losing someone who believed in them. But here's the deepest truth. The reason you reflected their better self is because you were stable in yours. Your emotional maturity created a space where they didn't have to fight. Your steadiness reduced their defenses. Your presence made their softness possible. And once they've experienced that, they can't unexperience it. They can deny it. They can suppress it. But the body remembers. That's why they can't get over you. You weren't just a lover. You were a mirror that showed them who they could be without fear. And losing that mirror doesn't just feel like losing love. It feels like losing access to the best version of themselves that you helped awaken. The delayed crash is when the avoidance distractions stop working and the reality finally lands. They didn't just lose a person, they lost a safe emotional home. This is the phase people misunderstand the most, because from the outside it can look like they moved on quickly. They might stay busy. They might post like they're fine. They might even flirt or date. They might act cold, proud, and untouched. But avoidant processing is often delayed. They don't grieve at the beginning the way a deeply emotional person does. They regulate first. They detach first. They stabilize their nervous system by creating distance, not by feeling. And for a while, that can look like strength. But it's not strength, it's a coping response. The avoidant's first instinct after loss is usually to shut off the pain and turn up control. They tell themselves a story. It's for the best. We weren't compatible. I needed space. It wasn't that serious. That story isn't always a conscious lie. It's an emotional shield. It prevents them from facing the deepest fear. I lost something real because I couldn't show up. So they distract. Work, gym friends, scrolling, flirting, new attention. Anything that keeps their nervous system from sitting in the silence long enough to feel. And if they can keep life loud, they don't have to hear the truth. But the nervous system is patient. It waits. It doesn't argue. It simply comes back when the noise fades. That's the crash. The crash usually hits in quiet moments, late nights, early mornings, a Sunday afternoon, a drive home, a random song, a memory of your voice, a moment where something good happens and they instinctively want to share it. Then remember you're not there. They don't get to go back and receive your warmth anymore. They don't get to lean on your steadiness. And suddenly the distance they demanded starts feeling like emptiness they can't fill. This is where grief enters. But for an avoidant, grief often looks like agitation before it looks like sadness. They can't settle. They feel restless. They get irritated easily. They feel bored with things that used to distract them. They may even feel numb and call it being fine. But numbness is not peace. It's a shutdown that starts cracking. Then shame arrives. Shame is the ugliest companion in this phase, because shame says, "You did this." Shame says, "You had something good and you mishandled it." Shame says, "You're the reason it ended." And an avoidant hates shame more than they hate loneliness, because shame threatens their identity as self-sufficient and unbothered. Shame makes them feel exposed. It makes them feel like the bad one. So they try to fight it. They justify again. They blame again. They minimize again. But the shame keeps returning because the evidence is in the absence. You're gone. The warmth is gone. The safety is gone. And no story can replace what their nervous system experienced with you. This is why the delayed crash can turn into obsession. Not a healthy, romantic obsession, but a mental loop. What if I had handled that differently? What if I had stayed? What if I had apologized? What if I didn't pull away? The mind starts revisiting every moment where you gave them a chance to show up. Every moment where you tried to communicate. Every moment where you softened your tone. Every moment where you asked for clarity and they gave distance. And now those moments hit differently because they can see the cost. They also start romanticizing the ordinary. Not just the big memories, the small ones. Your laugh. The way you listened. The way you calmed them. The way you cared about details. The way you made life feel softer. And this romanticizing isn't because you were perfect. It's because your presence regulated them. Your presence made them feel safe. And now safety is missing. And the absence makes them finally realize what they had. This is when many avoidants start hovering more intensely. They check your social media. They watch your stories quickly. They ask mutual friends about you. They send a random message. They test the waters. They want contact because contact gives relief. It calms the crash. It lowers the shame. It gives them a sense that maybe they haven't lost you completely. But notice what they often want in this moment: relief, not repair. They want the soothing effect of your presence without the discomfort of facing your pain. If you respond warmly, it can regulate them instantly. That's why the breadcrumb stage can restart. They get close enough to calm the panic, then pull back again once they feel safe, because closeness triggers fear again. That pull is the avoidance way of managing the crash without doing the deeper work. But the crash doesn't fully stop until one thing happens: they accept the truth. And the truth is, they lost something real, and they didn't lose it because love was absent. They lost it because emotional safety was inconsistent. They lost it because they couldn't hold vulnerability. They lost it because they tried to protect themselves from discomfort and ended up protecting themselves into loneliness. So the delayed crash is the avoidance nervous system catching up to reality. It is grief arriving late, shame arriving loud, and the mind replaying what the heart couldn't face at the time. And that's why they can't get over you quickly. Because the part of them that finally recognizes your value often wakes up after you've already had to detach to survive. They spiral between longing and fear, and that spiral is exactly why their behavior can look confusing, hot and cold, even obsessive, yet still inconsistent. Because the avoidant doesn't just miss you like a secure person misses someone. They miss you and fear you at the same time. They crave the safety you gave them, but they fear the vulnerability that safety requires. They want closeness, but closeness exposes them. They want you back, but they don't want to face the pain they caused. So their nervous system does what it has always done. It searches for control. This is the phase where they become two people inside one body. One part is pulling toward you with longing. That part remembers your warmth, your steadiness, your emotional home. That part replays your voice, your patience, the way you made them feel calm. That part thinks, I miss them. I want them. I shouldn't have lost this. The other part is pulling away with fear. That part remembers the pressure of intimacy, the discomfort of accountability, the vulnerability of being seen. That part thinks, what if they reject me? What if they're angry? What if they ask hard questions? What if I can't show up? What if I fail again? And when these two parts collide, the result is a spiral retreat. This is why the avoidant often doesn't come back cleanly. They come back in half steps. A random message that says nothing but tests everything. With no follow-through. A reaction to your story. A late-night check in when loneliness peaks. A sudden warmth that disappears when you respond. These are not always games, but they are nervous system strategies. They are attempts to get emotional relief without full emotional exposure. Because full exposure would mean owning the impact, hearing your pain, tolerating the discomfort of repair, and committing to consistent behavior, things their system has been trained to avoid. So they hover. Hovering is not just missing you. Hovering is fear management. They watch you to see if you're still reachable. They check to see if the door is closed. They look for signals. Are you happier? Are you dating? Are you indifferent? Are you still soft for them? Your detachment creates uncertainty, and uncertainty triggers anxiety. So they try to reduce anxiety with contact. Not necessarily to rebuild the relationship yet, but to calm the internal alarm. A single reply from you can regulate them like medicine. It's like proof that they haven't fully lost the safe place you represented. But then the second wave hits fear of closeness. If you respond warmly, now the avoidant feels the possibility of intimacy returning, and intimacy brings the very things they struggle with: expectations, consistency, emotional responsibility. So the same person who reached out can suddenly go quiet again, and you'll sit there wondering, why would they message me if they were going to disappear? The answer is simple: their longing reached out. Then their fear slammed on the brakes. This spiral is also where you may see mixed signals that feel emotionally unfair. They might act jealous while refusing commitment. They might speak with nostalgia but avoid direct conversation. They might imply regret but never address impact. They might say, I miss you, but also keep distance. They might show up intensely when they feel you slipping away, then fade when they feel you're close again. That's the avoidance nervous system, trying to keep safety without surrendering control. And in this stage, they often become more interested when you're less available. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because your unavailability makes the loss feel real. When you stop chasing, their system finally feels the consequence. Your calmness becomes the threat. Your peace becomes the trigger. And suddenly the avoidance longing becomes urgent. But urgency is not readiness. Urgency is often panic. Panic is, I'm losing them. Readiness is, I can show up differently. A panicked avoidant wants quick reassurance. They want you to respond soft in return. But once they feel safe again, the urgency fades, and their old fear of closeness returns. That's how the cycle keeps repeating. It's like they want the warmth of the fire, but every time they get close enough to feel it, they get scared of being burned. Now here is the painful reality for you. If you keep responding to their spiral with unlimited access, you become their regulation tool again. You become the button they press when they feel lonely, ashamed, or anxious. And that can keep you stuck for months or years, because they are not forced to grow. They can keep cycling between you and distance, using your empathy as a cushion. So the healthiest move in this phase is calm clarity, not emotional chasing. Calm clarity is what forces the spiral to either evolve into repair or collapse into repetition. Calm clarity says, if you want to talk and rebuild, I'm open. If you want casual contact with no accountability, I'm not available. That boundary is not punishment. It is protection. It stops you from becoming their emotional medication while they stay inconsistent. It also reveals whether their longing is mature enough to become action. Because here's the final truth about the longing, fear spiral. They can't get over you while they're still avoiding growth. They will keep missing the safety you gave them. They will keep craving your steadiness. They will keep thinking about you when life gets quiet. But unless they learn emotional tolerance, unless they learn to face discomfort, own impact, communicate, and show consistency, the spiral will keep repeating. And you deserve more than being someone's spiral. You deserve being someone's choice, with steady care, not just late, night longing and morning fear. They can't get over you until they face what they avoided. And that is the sixth keynote. The truth that ends the fantasy and exposes the real work. Because what they miss about you isn't just your personality, your looks, your voice, or your memories. What they miss is the safety you gave them. And safety doesn't disappear from the nervous system just because they try to distract themselves. It stays like an imprint. But here's the catch. They can't recreate that safety with anyone else until they confront the pattern inside themselves that destroyed it with you. This is why some avoidants look like they move on quickly but still carry you for years. They can date, talk, flirt, post, travel, stay busy, and still feel a quiet emptiness underneath. Because the emptiness isn't about lacking options. It's about lacking emotional regulation. It's about lacking the skill of staying present when intimacy rises. It's about lacking the capacity to repair instead of withdraw. And the person who gave them safety becomes the one their nervous system keeps reaching for in moments of stress, loneliness, shame, or silence. But they will never truly get over you through time alone. Time doesn't heal avoidance. Time just gives it new clothing. They will get over you only through truth about their defenses, their fear, their shutdown, their need for control, and the consequences of those patterns. Truth about what they did when love required vulnerability. Truth about how they protected themselves into loneliness. This is where the fork in the road appears. There are only two outcomes: growth or repetition. Growth means they finally stop romanticizing and start repairing. Growth means they stop hovering and start owning. Growth means they stop sending crumbs and start having real conversations. Growth means they accept that love is not just longing, it's responsibility. If they choose growth, you'll see it in behavior, not words. You'll see consistency. You'll see humility. You'll see them able to hear your pain without getting defensive. You'll see them apologize without excuses. You'll see them show up in small ways repeatedly, because safety is built in small ways, not grand speeches. Growth also means they face discomfort instead of fleeing it. They learn to tolerate the internal panic that comes with closeness. They learn to name their fear instead of acting it out. They learn to communicate before disappearing. They learn that your feelings are not a threat, they're information. They learn to repair after conflict instead of punishing with silence. They learn emotional presence. This is the work most avoidants avoid their whole life, because it feels like standing naked in front of their own shame. But if they don't choose growth, then repetition is inevitable. And repetition means they will keep missing you without changing. They will keep reaching out when lonely, then pulling away when intimacy returns. They will keep cycling with new people, recreating the same pattern: a little closeness, then distance, a little warmth, then withdrawal, a little romance, then shutdown. And every time they repeat it, the memory of you becomes heavier, because you weren't just someone they liked. You were the person who gave them a taste of safety. You were proof that life could feel softer. You were proof that intimacy could exist without chaos. And now they keep chasing that feeling without becoming the person who can sustain it. That's why the phrase, "they can't get over you," is often misunderstood. It's not always love. Sometimes it's unresolved grief. Sometimes it's unfinished shame. Sometimes it's the nervous system craving a place it could rest. Sometimes it's the pain of realizing they pushed away someone who genuinely cared, and now they can't find that same calm anywhere else, because they keep recreating the same emotional conditions that destroy it. And here's the part that matters. For you, your presence alone will not heal them. Your patience alone will not fix the pattern. Your empathy alone will not teach them emotional maturity. The only thing that changes an avoidant is their decision to face themselves. They can miss you and still refuse growth. They can regret you and still choose comfort over accountability. They can cry and still repeat the cycle. Emotion is not transformation. Accountability is. So this keynote is about reality. The avoidance can't get over you ends the moment they do one of two things. Either they face the fear and grow, or they bury the fear and repeat. If they grow, they stop needing you as regulation, because they learn to regulate themselves. They stop needing your steadiness as a crutch, because they build steadiness inside. They stop idealizing you as the only safe love, because they become capable of giving safe love. And if they repeat, you remain the ghost in the background of their life, not because you're magical, but because you represented something their nervous system still craves and their behavior still destroys. This is why your detachment matters. Your detachment forces truth. It forces the avoidant to feel the full consequence without being rescued by your warmth. It gives them the opportunity to grow, but it also protects you from being dragged back into the cycle. Because the super empath's real power is not healing someone who keeps running. The super empath's real power is knowing when love must be protected by leaving, and when leaving is the lesson that finally makes growth possible.